Well, it has just hit 11 a.m. here in Kansas City, and I know it's all different times for those of you on the streams. So thanks everyone for coming to this year's VuFind State of the Project talk. I'm Damian Katz, Director of Library Technology at Villanova University and longtime VuFind guy. And I'm here to tell you about what's happened recently and what's coming next in the VuFind community. And if I talk really fast, there might be time for questions at the end as well. So first of all, I will start with a few thanks. Of course, thank you to the Open Library Foundation for their support. Thank you to the WOLFcon planning group also for making all of this possible, bringing us all together, both in person and virtually. And to VuFind's registered service providers, all of these lovely organizations that can help to support your VuFind needs and which also financially support the VuFind project. Their participation is greatly appreciated. So getting right into VuFind land, let's talk about what's new. So this is really the what's next slide from last year. Did release VuFind 10.1 and a series of patch releases during the course of the year since the last WOLFcon. The 10.1 series added support for the version 2 WorldCat API since the old classic API went offline. We made Bootstrap 5 based themes our default and deprecated the old Bootstrap 3 themes. We added multi-facet selection functionality, so users can now apply multiple facets and submit a button if you turn on this optional feature. We added the ability to configure sticky HTML elements, so if you want something like a persistently floating search bar, you can turn that on. We added some new permission providers so that you can tie functionality within VuFind to things like special URLs or special cookies. And as always, we improved accessibility, fixed bugs, added new config settings, all of that. Then, because VuFind 11 has been a big project, we went ahead and we released 10.2, with 10.1 technically coming very soon, but really done. This was a small release with a couple of features designed to sort of bridge the gap between 10 and 11. So we added support for authentication using OpenID Connect, which is a useful thing. We added an interactive menu providing access to all of our command line utilities, just as a bit of extra user friendliness for those who don't like typing all of the possible command line commands. And in support of the transition, as I mentioned, we added a new view helper called the Asset Manager, which is used for providing CSS and JS resources in the themes. And this is necessary because changes in the Laminas ecosystem prevent us from continuing to use their existing helpers the way we have in the past. So 11.0 is going to rewrite the way assets are managed. By introducing the Asset Manager in 10.2, this allows you to rewrite your themes without breaking existing compatibility, so you can prepare for that 11.0 upgrade. And of course, as always, bug fixes and enhancements. So outside of what's new in the software, there's also been ongoing activity in the community. In the form of some documentation and resulting activities. So the project management committee has been around now since 2021. I think the group's pretty mature. We're sort of in a business as usual state of affairs, but we did do some new things. We developed a formal process for reviewing JIRA tickets because we have a lot of open JIRA tickets, and some of them have been open for a decade or more. So it's time to figure out, which of these really need to stay open forever and which ones can we maybe let go of? Also, which ones have we already actually finished and just forgotten to close? We also developed a style guide for the wiki just to polish up our documentation. We published a software lifecycle policy just to better formalize our recommendations and practices around supporting older versions of the software. Please upgrade the software, please. But we do our best to help you wherever you may be. And we finally put out a VPAT, an accessibility template talking about the accessibility characteristics of the software and our commitment to that. And, as a consequence of developing these new processes, we've done some things like closed a lot of outdated Jira tickets. Thank you, Megan, who's in the room, for doing a lot of that work. We also added a process that monitors the wiki for pages that haven't been updated in several years so that we can automatically find things that are likely to be out of date. And we've been cleaning that up regularly. So there shouldn't be any hopelessly outdated pages in the wiki. There probably are anyway, but we're trying really hard. And so that's what's new. So let's talk a little bit about what's next. And as I mentioned, VuFind 11 is a pretty big piece, and it is coming later this year, hopefully in November, if we remain on track. So some new features. There's a new area of the account section where users can look at and bulk remove their generated content like comments, ratings, and tags. There's integration with Cloudflare Turnstile if you need to keep those nasty bots out. There's a new search backend that integrates with ProQuest's federated search gateway, which lets you directly search the contents of ProQuest databases that you subscribe to. There's a new audit system that can be turned on to track things like logins and IRS actions if you're trying to troubleshoot things or if you want to keep track of particular activities in your system. We've improved the processes that can be used to augment search results based on identifiers. Previously, we used DOIs and could talk to some APIs to get things like related full-text links. Now we can use other identifiers like ISSNs and ISBNs in addition to the DOIs, which broadens the amount of augmentation we can do of your search results. And we have online payment support now with integrations with a couple of different payment systems. So if you turn this on and configure it, users can pay their fines through VuFind. We've also improved some of our command line tooling. It's been increasingly awkward that you have to set up your database and upgrade your database through the web browser. You don't have to anymore. You can now do it all from the command line if you prefer. And again, there's so many new config settings and little improvements that people have contributed. I could spend all day just listing those. So in addition to those new features, there are also some big changes coming. As I mentioned earlier, release 10.1 deprecated Bootstrap 3-based themes. VuFind 11 completely removes them. We have to cut the cord on these. We've got to get to a supported version of Bootstrap. So again, VuFind 10 is designed as a transitional release. Go to 10, that has tools that will help you get your themes up to date. Do that, and then the upgrade to 11 will be much less painful. Additionally, we finally got rid of the Ramanas DB database abstraction library, have replaced it with Doctrine. I feel really good about this. The code is more readable. The tooling is great. It actually highlighted some minor flaws and inconsistencies in our database schemas that no one had ever noticed before. And again, because of the transitional nature of release 10, we did most of our database refactoring there. So the changes in 11 are at the lowest level, defining the internals of the database services. So if you can get to VuFind 10, the upgrade to 11 should be fairly painless unless you've built custom database services, in which case you have to do a little bit of translation. But it's not that bad. Doctrine is nice. The asset manager view helper that I mentioned being introduced in 10.2 is required in 11 in order to upgrade the Ramanas view library. We had to cut the cord on our custom subclasses of some of their view helpers. And it's going to be a recurring theme of today's talk that Ramanas is going through a lot of change. And one of the things that they're doing is dropping support for old libraries that aren't widely used or that have better modern replacements. And so they've discontinued support for things like Ramanas config, Ramanas crypt, Ramanas loader, and Ramanas log, all of which we have either reduced or replaced with different things in release 11. because of, as I keep saying, the fact that VuFind 10 is designed to help you transition into VuFind 11, we also made the decision to stop supporting upgrades for earlier versions of VuFind. Please upgrade to version 10, work it through all of these issues, and then you'll have a smooth path to 11. And this means that we could finally stop maintaining code that we've been maintaining for more than a decade that would allow you to upgrade directly from VuFind 1.0 to the latest version. I mean, that was cool, but I hope no one's planning to do that. So 10 is the new baseline. And we'll try to keep our changes more small and incremental to the greatest degree possible going forward. And finally, we've just updated some other dependencies. We've gotten up to the latest version of Solr, and we've dropped support for MySQL 5 because, again, no one should be using MySQL 5. Other things coming up. As I say, 11.0 is on the horizon, so it is not long before we will be thinking about what comes after 11.0, and that is, of course, 11.1 with maybe some new features, but not major changes, and 12.0, which will be our next breaking change release, because there's always something that forces us to make breaking changes. I'm going to tell you what that is. So, of course, there will be ongoing upgrades and modernizations as part of all this work. One thing that happened sooner than 11.1 is raising our PHP requirement to 8.2. We originally announced dropping support for PHP 8.1 in release 11, but then the PHP community extended the lifetime of PHP versions. So we deferred that, but 8.1 is really hitting end of life before the end of this year. So then we get to raise our minimum to 8.2 and force you all to do healthy things on your servers and not run unsupported versions of software. Here's a very small bullet that represents a very big project. I've talked about Laminas dropping things, and one of the things that they have announced they're dropping later this year is Laminas MVC, the model view controller framework that is really the basis of much of VuFind's architecture. Now, on the one hand, this is terrible because it's going to be a lot of work to move away from it. On the other hand, this is probably overdue because if you ask me what is the piece of VuFind's code that is most out of date, worst organized, most in need of a refresh, I would say it's our controllers. There's a lot of just gunk in there. So this is going to force us to review that, come up with a new shape and form, and migrate again. It's going to be impactful. It can't be avoided. But we've gotten, a good almost 15 years out of this framework. Our code is well organized and concerns are pretty well separated. This just is going to take us further in that direction. But it's going to take community effort. There's going to be ongoing discussion and planning. I encourage you to participate in community calls, Slack, whatever works for you. If you have opinions about this, keep an eye on it. All help will be appreciated. As soon as we get 11.0 out the door, figuring this piece out and getting started on it is going to be #1 priority in the community. And with that huge thing aside, also time permitting, there are some other Laminas things that are getting old and creaky that we'll try to move away from as well. The HTTP library, for example, is not compliant with modern standards in some ways. We're probably going to move more toward Guzzle. And we keep saying, we're going to stop using the old Solr Facet API, and then we don't get around to doing it because the old Solr Facet API still works. But maybe we'll stop using the old deprecated Solr Facet API as well. And of course, there will be new features. I was just talking with others here this morning about the fact that the community is growing so much. We are getting incredible wealth of contributions in the form of pull requests to the point that it's difficult for me to keep up with them. So there are lots of new features contributed. We just need to prioritize which ones get merged when and what releases they fall into and how we can share the load of reviewing and completing all of this stuff. And of course, there may be things that aren't in progress yet, but should be always open to getting those ideas. So mapping used to be just an annual activity for the community. It's now really ongoing through the community calls. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our upcoming mapping event. But whether or not you're there, I also encourage you, do it at any time and help influence the roadmap. It's an ongoing thing. But let's talk about community, since I already have. There are a few next steps in our community development. One is the ongoing process of raising funds. We always appreciate it when partners provide us some money, but we need to find new ways of doing that. Again, this was sort of alluded to at the higher level in the introduction to WOLFcon. The OLF is doing this broadly. But just as one example, one thing we've been investigating is book publishing partnerships, where if someone publishes a book about VuFind, they could give percentage of proceeds back to the community to support development of VuFind. We're working through some legal agreements to make that a possibility. Other ongoing community steps, keep improving the documentation. This is a never-ending task. I think we're doing a pretty good job, but there's always more to do. In terms of something more new, an idea that came up on a recent community call was building an accessibility advisory group, because one of the challenges with accessibility is that solutions are not always clear-cut. There may be several different ways to approach a problem, or trade-offs, and in several instances just gotten stuck because no one can make a decision. So the project management committee was looking at putting together some structure to build a decision-making body to help ensure that accessibility stuff moves forward and doesn't just get stuck in circular debates. So that, I think, is going to be a big PMC goal for next year. And also just generally identifying next steps. As I say, the project management committee has found a pretty good rhythm. We do a lot of the same things every year. But we might want to go back out to the community and do some brainstorming to see if we're missing anything. So there may be some community exercises coming if we don't feel like we have enough to do already. And your feedback is, of course, always welcome. Also coming up next week is VuFind Berlin. That's in it for us, the German VuFind Summit, which is also serving as this year's International VuFind Summit. It's this coming Monday and Tuesday, the 29th and 30th. It is a hybrid event. Free online registration is still open. If you're interested in this, you can just go to vufind.org, click on events. All the links are there. So I'll be giving this exact same talk again. So if you didn't get enough of it just now, you can come and listen to it a second time. But also beyond that, there's a lot more interesting stuff about the future of VuFind, the way people are using VuFind, and our annual road mapping session at the end. So if you want to be actively involved in VuFind road mapping brainstorming, please come to the summit. And I'm just going to conclude with my usual thoughts about road mapping, which you've probably seen before, but it's always good to get people thinking about these things. If you want to contribute to our road mapping, whether at next week's summit or just more generally through the community call, I'm always interested in feedback on how we can make the community stronger, how it could serve you better. If there are features your institutions want but do not already have, or if there are institutions, if there are features that your institutions have built and haven't given back to us, can we work with you to get those incorporated into the project? That not only benefits the whole community, it lowers your maintenance burden locally. Can we do better with tutorials, documentations, training sessions? I realize we're going to have to rewrite some things with upcoming architectural changes, so I'm already braced for that, but maybe we can throw in some other improvements along the way. And of course, think about how you could help. It's a great growing community, lots of people doing a lot of work, but there's certainly room to spread some of it thinner, and I'm always grateful for any help I can get. And I'm in the last minute of my time slot, so not a whole lot of time for real-time conversation, but you can catch me by email, damien.katz@villanova.edu. I'm at Damien Katz on the Open Library Foundation Slack. I am always happy to talk about VuFind with anyone at any time. I think people will attest to that. So don't be shy. Reach out with your suggestions, questions, etc. I'll be happy to help. I'm here for the next couple of days too, so feel free to approach me at the conference. And I thank you for your time.